Greetings, fellow keepers. It's Soniel here with yet another edition of the Keeper's Corner, and a much anticipated one here as we take our first preview look at the Valkyrie. Now that we've gotten her a little more leveled up and become a little more familiar with her, we'll have another look at her skills here. I know we had a brief look at them in the 1.7 update video, but we want to take a brief look at a few of them here again. The Shield of Yreth particularly is going to be your mainstay skill on her in just about any build. It's a short cooldown self buff that has a cooldown and initiative pretty similar to the Shaman's Spirit Rage, even really with his cooldown reduction passive. It's a very quick cooldown ability, and it is very powerful for her, particularly because of the large bonus health gain, and of course because of the bonus fire damage here. And the reason the bonus fire damage is so vital to her is because as a one-handed stabbing user, most one-handed stabbing weapons have a very low base damage, even at max level. At max level, the Dark Defender here only has 81 damage. So this is going to allow her to get up into that 200 base damage range, and it's going to allow for that secondary element damage on her attacks, which is going to make the physical attack Blade Thrust a lot more powerful. Unfortunately, it does fall off pretty quickly, so the only real ways to get 2 stacks of the fire damage active is with the Druid's Vigor or the Warmaster's Call to Arms. And we'll get into her different synergies with other heroes a little bit later. But the other mainstay skill you're going to want to focus on here with her is the Righteous Bolt. This is her highest base damage ability. It is a short, single-target lightning skill that is ranged. And it does benefit from her passive to lightning damage. However, for right now, I'm going to typically say that the other 2 passives are so powerful and so versatile that you're going to really want to use those in most situations. Now, the third option for her is going to be either the Light of Yreth or the Blade Thrust here. Now, when using her with a Doom team, which again we'll cover a little bit more later on with the hero battle stuff, the Light of Yreth can be very, very valuable, both for maintaining the soul energy you need for dooms, but also the soul energy you need for revives to trigger that damage passive. However, the Blade Thrust, much like the Shield of Yreth and the Righteous Bolt, is a very quick cooldown single target ability. Now, being that it's physical instead of lightning, it does do a lot less damage to tankier heroes like the Knight, the Blackguard, the Templar, things like that. But that does go away a little bit with the Shield of Yreth stacks, and of course with Doom stacks or debuffs from the Barbarian or Necromancer, or even with buffs from the Knight or the Warmaster. That will certainly boost the damage on this Blade Thrust pretty significantly. And then again, for passives, we're looking at the On Death ability here, which at first I thought wasn't quite as powerful. However, after leveling it up a little bit, and you'll see I'm even still 2 levels off of what she's capable of at 5 stars here, and 4 levels off from the max skill range, the base damage on this is pretty high, and the damage jump from skill level to skill level is also pretty high. So at skill level 10, I can imagine this is very, very effective with the right utility teams, which we'll have a look at in a moment here. And the other one here is, of course, her counterattack ability on fire, lightning, and stun damage. This doesn't have a huge base damage on its own, but with the gains from either an attack buff like Battle Fury or Inspiration, or a debuff like Doom that seems to be the most valuable with this setup, this can be really, really, really hurtful to heroes like the Sorceress, the Berserker, the Archmage, the Blackguard, the Ninja, anyone that really relies on those damage types, the Spellsword as well, which is a more commonly used hero in those higher brackets. And we'll have a look here at an example of a team that really punishes itself because of that on-death passive. And the team we're encountering here in the Wizard's Chosen is a Berserker with the Volcanic Axe. Now, of course, any weapon type that gives fire or lightning damage is really going to hurt itself against the Valkyrie. Additionally, the Fire Aura on the Shaman causes counter damage on every attack. But as you can see, that was a pretty decent hit the Shaman just took, and the counter damage does gain the bonus from Shield of Yreth. So it is worth noting that you really want to keep that Shield of Yreth available to you in any build you're using on her. And you'll see, even with the Knight's taunt up, the Shield of Yreth is allowing her to deal significant damage to these backline heroes without having to use any active or soul skills. And the damage boost from Doom certainly allows it to do a lot more damage, as we see the Sorceress just killed herself there. Without us having to attack her a single time, the Barbarian's going to deal himself a little chunk of damage here, as the Valkyrie and the Spellsword simply work on the Knight. They don't really have to focus on much else. And of course, when that hero goes down, you can leave the hero that's hurting themselves to beat themselves up, so to speak. And as you can see here, the Berserker just did about 1,500 damage to himself on that counterattack. So this is so far what I've found to be the better setup for her. Now, of course, there are probably a lot of good team setups for her. One of the other heroes I found she has a lot of synergy with is the Warmaster, as well as the Druid and the Knight, the Necromancer, and the Barbarian. Obviously, those heroes tend to have a lot of synergy with most damage dealers, but because of the nature of her passives and whatnot, anyone who can boost her attack does benefit her some, but anyone who's debuffing the enemy is going to benefit her a lot more, simply because when she dies and you revive her, that gain from any buff she has is lost. So if the enemies are debuffed, whether it be with Doom or Baleful Glare or Ray of Enfeeblement, that on-death ability is going to deal the most possible damage. Now, of course, Doom being an AoE debuff, it's going to allow for the biggest output out of those three, and we'll have a look here against this team of how the death and revive situation can be valuable for DPS output. Now, of course, I have experimented with her using the Ranger, the Blackguard, a number of other heroes, and again, it seems like the combination of the Mystic and the Cleric here have the most synergy, due to the ability to, like I said, put that Doom up, but again, to revive her when she's killed, to trigger that on-death revive proc of damage. And I'm missing altogether, I want to say, about 220 total attack and defense points on her, between star levels and enchantments. Actually, probably a little bit more than that with the levels I'm missing on my Dragonscale armor. So, of course, I'm far from having her fully maxed out, and she's already performing at a very high level. So I can only imagine that when she's geared to the teeth, so to speak, and at her full potential, that these abilities will only perform better than they are now. Of course, that being the counter damage and the on-death passive, the Righteous Bolt and the Blade Thrust already perform very well for me. And as a frontline hero, you can see I've been using her almost exclusively as a frontline hero. I did experiment a little bit with her in the backline, using all three damage abilities, the Righteous Bolt, the Blade Thrust, and the Angelic Volley. Unfortunately, the Angelic Volley seems to be a little closer to a long cooldown than a medium cooldown. It is very slow. With the damage boost to lightning skills, it can do some pretty decent damage, especially with Doom up. Like, for example, with this backline here, an Angelic Volley would finish off that Mystic and probably take these other heroes down to about half health. But you're going to be waiting, 2 or 3 skill cycles for it to come back up. And as you can see here, that particular on-death proc wasn't for a huge amount of damage, but anytime you get something for a hero dying as opposed to losing something is going to be pretty beneficial. And when you're using this setup with both Doom and Revive, if you're struggling with soul energy, you can of course replace the Blade Thrust with the Light of Yreth. Light of Yreth does go off fairly often, just a little bit slower than the Shield of Yreth. So that's going to help you maintain almost a full soul energy bar at all times for Dispels, Doom, Revive, and even for her Melt Armor, which can be a very powerful damage ability against high armor tanks and things like that. And after this, we'll have a quick look at her in the tower attacks. Now, originally, I had put her into tower attacks kind of just fooling around to see how often I could trigger that on-death ability, and it turned out that she doesn't really die that often in tower attacks, even against higher level towers. And part of the reason for that is her Shield of Wrath ability and the lower cooldowns and initiative of monsters, of course. And we'll have a look here at one of the more recent towers I've attacked to see how she performs as a frontline tank in tower attacks. Of course, her soul generation is much greater than the knight. I paired her here with the Druid and the Warlock and the Cleric. But in terms of a frontline hero, I feel that she trumps the Knight, the Blackguard, the Templar, especially with the addition of revive potions and not really needing to run the Templar for that secondary revive on the Cleric. And apologies, we'll find a little more difficult tower here to have a look at. But again, without that need for the Templar, she becomes a very, very viable option as a frontline hero in tower attacks. Her damage output is tremendous, especially against high armor heroes like the Paladin, the Warmaster, the Tank, and monsters like the Vampire Lords, the Demonic Watchers, things like that. She can really put out a lot of damage with that soul skill, and especially against the walls and the suit of arms as well. And I've found that a lot of shamans will really punish themselves against her, whether or not they use the fire aura, because other than the Blackguard and Chill Towers, they have been the only heroes to really kill her for me. And when she dies in towers, that on-death skill does a ton more damage than it does in hero attacks, or hero battles rather. And especially considering you're usually able to pool the energy you need for a revive immediately after, you're going to always double up on that AoE damage. So instead of, the 200 to 300 range, you're going to be getting 600-700 damage on all of their monsters and machines and whatnot. So that's really going to help clear out bombard floors, even those floors with a lot of Inquisitors and a couple Chill Towers, things like that. Allowing a hero to die, like I said previously, and gain something from it is always going to be pretty beneficial in most situations. And now, when you're using her in towers, like I said before, I originally put her in here so that she would die, and that didn't really work out. She ended up being a lot more tanky than I had anticipated. You really want to focus your heals on your backline heroes. You don't want to invest too much into keeping her health topped off. You want to make sure that you're able to invigor her to keep those damage abilities and those shields available to you. But you want to keep her at a little bit lower health so that you can allow her to die once or twice and clear some of those easier floors a little faster, or even just to get a little bit of a boost on some more difficult floors. And of course, carrying a revive potion with you will always help if you don't have that soul energy available at the time of her death for a revive. You can, of course, carry a soul skill potion as well. The lower level soul energy potions don't really give a lot of soul bar. The highest level ones even only give about 2/3 of a bar. That being said, they still are fairly valuable for using at the early outset of a floor, for getting the quick boost that you need to cast the Shadowy Censer, or to even use that Melt Armor ability, which can be very useful for killing off Bombards or Inquisitors in floors. That's one of the great advantages she has over the Templar or the Knight or the Blackguard, is that good on-demand damage ability. I know the Blackguard does have Soul Rend, of course, but the Melt Armor, again, seems to be very, very effective at taking out Bombards, Inquisitors, any trouble enemies. It'll deal that extra damage you need because it is such a low cooldown, low cost ability too. You're able to chain it off at least 2 times on most floors, and you really don't have to be too reserved in how often you use it. I typically treat it as another active skill and just send it off as often as possible and help that DPS output speed things up. But as you can see here, the Valkyrie really is worth that gem investment of 2,500 gems. Now, I would anticipate the packs for her will be extended a little bit due to the delay in the iTunes store approving the 1.7 update. Now, after the packs disappear, from what I understand, she will appear in your hero shop regularly, but for a gem cost as opposed to that 100,000 gold cost. So it's yet to be seen if that gem cost will still be 2,500 or if it may be slightly higher. But if you're a free player or a paid player, whatever the case may be, you definitely want to start stockpiling those gems to unlock the Valkyrie if you haven't already. And if you have unlocked her, again, you want to be focusing on those heroic missions, those tower rewards, and even so much as picking up the stones for her in the shop with gold when they're available. Because you really want to get those soul levels up as quick as possible and get her in your lineups and start using her. She's absolutely a powerhouse hero, it seems, with a lot of great different functions. So I hope you guys enjoyed the brief look at her. Again, as I get her a little more leveled up, we'll come back and have some looks at her in live matches and things like that. Unfortunately, with the delay on the iOS update, there's not many opponents for live matches at the moment. But hopefully you guys enjoyed that one. If you haven't already, subscribe to the Keeper's Corner so you can get all of our new updates, things like that. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. Of course, any comments, suggestions, things like that, you can leave in the comments section below, or you can contact me on the Tower Keepers Discord server. And we will catch you guys on the next one.